It is 12:07 p.m., and the private airport cafeteria is packed with elite travelers. Ethan Brooks, a 41-year-old cafeteria worker and single dad, moves through the crowd in his faded uniform. He accidentally drops a heavy tray in front of a VIP guest. Margaret Sloan, a billionaire aviation CEO, sneers, "This is why you belong behind a counter." As executives laugh, the humiliation is public. Ethan quietly cleans the floor. But outside, an $8 million jet is grounded, and top engineers cannot find the fault. They have no idea they are about to witness the impossible. Ethan Brooks moved through the cafeteria with practiced invisibility. To the pilots and tech moguls at the private terminal, he was just the guy. The one who served lukewarm coffee and cleared sandwiches with a polite nod. But Ethan was living a double life. Years ago, he had been a decorated military jet engine specialist, the engine whisperer, a man who could diagnose a failing turbine simply by feeling the vibrations through the fuselage. He possessed a rare, intuitive connection to metal and fire, an ability to detect a microscopic flaw that high-resolution cameras would miss. He had spent years in the desert heat, breathing in JP-8 fuel and ozone, learning the language of machines that cost more than small cities. He had walked away from that world of adrenaline and prestige when his wife Sarah passed away, leaving their bank accounts bare after a long illness. He chose this cafeteria job for one unshakable reason: his 8-year-old daughter Lily. A shift here ended at 3:01 p.m., allowing him to be at the school gates by 3:15 every day. In the complex world of aviation, Ethan was vastly overqualified, but as a father, he was exactly where he needed to be. Every dollar was meticulously budgeted for rent, groceries, and Lily's college fund. He traded the roar of Pratt & Whitney engines for the hum of industrial dishwashers, all to ensure Lily never felt the void of an absent parent. During the day, he wiped tables and ignored the condescending stares of men who earned more in an hour than he did in a month. He took the bus to work, wearing worn shoes, all to save for Lily's future. He had buried the memory of his medals, finding peace in the anonymity. No one expected anything from the man with the mop. He had learned to mask his intelligence behind a mask of simple service, nodding at technical conversations he could have corrected in seconds. He watched the sleek jets through the window, his fingers twitching with muscle memory whenever a turbine spooled up, but he stayed focused on the dishes. Margaret Sloan was his total opposite, a woman built on cold efficiency and a zero-tolerance policy for failure. She had climbed to the top of the aviation industry as the Iron Turbine, a title earned through ruthless decision-making and an obsession with metrics. Her newest prototype, the Sloan 7, was currently grounded by an auxiliary engine fault that no expert could explain. It was her masterpiece, a machine meant to redefine private travel, but now it sat motionless, a 5-ton embarrassment threatening her company's stock price and her reputation as the queen of the skies. 3 teams of world-class engineers had run every digital scan available. They used cloud-based diagnostics and real-time telemetry from Munich. The data always came back normal, yet the engine choked and gasped during every cycle. It was digital perfection masking a physical failure. To Margaret, this wasn't just a glitch. It was a personal betrayal by the technology she had championed. She paced the tarmac, her heels clicking like a countdown to a financial disaster, her phone vibrating with urgent calls from shareholders demanding answers. The delay was costing Margaret a billion-dollar merger meeting in Manhattan. When Ethan dropped that tray in the cafeteria, sending plastic plates and cold pasta clattering across the expensive tiles, Margaret didn't see a grieving father. She saw a low-level employee failing at a simple task. "If you can't even manage a plastic tray," she hissed, "how can you expect to exist in a world where we manage the future of transportation?" The mocking laughter of the executives echoed as Ethan mopped the floor. He didn't feel anger. He only worried that the cost of the broken plates might be docked from his paycheck, making Lily's weekend treat a bit harder to afford. But as Margaret stormed toward the hangar in a cloud of expensive perfume and fury, the terminal's glass walls vibrated. Outside, the jet attempted another startup sequence. The pitch was wrong. To the untrained ear, it was just noise. To Ethan, it was a cry for help, a rhythmic, metallic stutter buried deep in the whine. almost like a heartbeat skipping a beat. His instincts, dormant for years, screamed at him. He knew that sound. He had heard it on a downed fighter in the desert years ago. It was a physical defect masquerading as a digital ghost. He checked the clock, 45 minutes before he had to pick up Lily. With a deep breath, Ethan took off his apron, straightened his back, and walked toward the restricted hangar with a purpose he hadn't felt in a decade. Ethan approached the yellow security line of the technical zone, causing immediate friction. A security manager blocked his path, hand resting on his radio. "Brooks, get back to the kitchen before I report you. This is a restricted area, not a break room for the staff." Margaret Sloan turned at the commotion, recognizing the tray dropper. "Did you come here to spill soup on the engine too?" she mocked, her lip curling. "Or are you lost and looking for the exit?" The engineers, clutching million-dollar diagnostic tablets and wearing pristine white lab coats, laughed. The atmosphere was thick with professional elitism and the sharp, biting scent of jet fuel. Ethan stood his ground, his eyes fixed on the engine housing. "I hear the error," he said simply, his voice cutting through the noise with a strange level authority. The lead engineer, Dr. Aries, a man with 3 PhDs and a legendary ego, didn't even look up from his screen. "The telemetry is perfect, kid. The subsystems are firing in sequence. It's a ghost in the code, something far beyond the understanding of someone who clears tables and refills salt shakers for a living." Margaret crossed her arms, eyes withering. "And you heard it while serving sandwiches?" she mocked, her voice dripping with venom. "Tell me, do you often diagnose aerospace engineering problems between wiping down the condiment bar?" Ethan met her gaze with a clarity that made her momentarily uncomfortable. "I hear it with 20 years of experience in high-performance turbines. I spent a decade in the Fifth Wing, listening to engines that had been through hell and back in the Middle East. Your tablets see what the software says is happening. I'm listening to what the metal is doing. I've diagnosed birds in the intake and sand in the burners before your tablets even booted up." Margaret checked her watch. Desperation was starting to win over her pride. She had 20 minutes before the window for her meeting closed. "Fine," she snapped, her voice sharp as a blade. "I'll give you 30 seconds. Consider it a halftime show for my team to relax before I fire half of them. Give us your expert opinion, whisperer." She waved the guards away, her eyes challenging him to fail in front of everyone. Ethan didn't hesitate or show nerves. He walked past the glowing laser sensors and high-tech scaffolds, his presence a jarring contrast to the sterile, futuristic environment. He climbed the maintenance ladder to the secondary engine intake, moving with a fluid, practiced ease that stunned Dr. Aris. Without a laptop, a sensor, or a manual, he simply closed his eyes and leaned his forehead against the cowling. The hangar went deathly quiet as the cafeteria guy performed his strange ritual. He placed his bare hand on the cold, polished titanium skin, feeling for the resonance that the machines couldn't quantify. In his mind, the cafeteria and the gray uniform faded away. He was back in the military hangars, surrounded by ozone and raw, unbridled power. He searched for a discordant note in the harmony of the machine. He was looking for the hitch, the tiny, irregular thrumming that was being cleverly masked by the high-frequency electronics. One engineer whispered to another, loud enough for Ethan to hear, "Is he praying to the machine or just taking a nap? Maybe he's waiting for a tip." But then Ethan felt it, a micro-oscillation, a rhythmic hitch occurring every 7 rotations of the turbine. To the computer, it was a negligible 0.001% margin of error, a mere rounding mistake in the data stream. But to a master's hand, it was the jagged vibration of metal fatigue, a physical reality that was ready to snap under the violent pressure of a high-altitude climb. The digital sensors were blind to this because they were programmed to look for failure, not the warning of failure. The engineers were obsessed with the digital shadow, completely ignoring the physical object casting it. Ethan opened his eyes, the look of a tired server completely replaced by the piercing authority of a master. "You're looking for a digital error in the fuel mapping," he echoed through the hangar, his voice carrying a weight that silenced the room. "But the problem is structural. You've over-engineered the sensors until they've stopped listening to the hardware. They're only listening to their own code. You've taught them to ignore the truth because the truth doesn't fit your algorithm. That's impossible, Dr. Aris defended, stepping forward. These sensors are the most advanced on Earth, capable of detecting a microgram of soot in the exhaust. Advanced doesn't mean right, Ethan countered, stepping down from the ladder. Your sensors believe the machine is perfect until it fails. I'm telling you it's already broken. It's just waiting for 10,000 feet of altitude and a pressure drop to prove it to you in the most violent way possible. You're not looking for a bug, you're looking for a fracture. Margaret felt a shiver of genuine doubt. Ethan's voice carried a weight of truth that no tablet could provide. Ethan signaled for total silence. Kill the air handlers. I need it dead quiet. The engineers looked at Margaret, but she was caught in the gravity of his confidence. She nodded. In the heavy silence, Ethan tapped the engine casing with a small penlight. Tap, tap, tock. To the team, it was random noise. To Ethan, it was a sonar map. He stopped at an obscure junction behind the heat shielding. There, a microfracture in the fuel shroud bypass. Dr. Aris scoffed. That part is rated for 10,000 hours. Our sensors would have flagged any drop. You're guessing, Brooks. Ethan didn't flinch. The fracture only opens under startup heat. Your sensors think the pressure drop is a normal thermal fluctuation. They're overcompensating by dumping more fuel. At 30,000 feet, that shroud will shatter. The engine will ignite midair, and your software will pump fuel straight into the fire. You won't even have time to react. The fire suppression won't stop a structural breach. Margaret's face went pale. The logic was terrifyingly sound. Open it up, she commanded. I want a visual. But the delay, Aris began. Do it now, she snapped, or you're finished. A technician climbed up with a borescope and dye kit. Minutes passed in suffocating silence. The engineers shifted uncomfortably, avoiding Ethan's gaze. Finally, a voice cracked over the radio. He's right. There's a hairline crack in the weld, hidden behind the sensor mount. The mount was damping the vibration. If we had flown, we would have failed 10 minutes after takeoff. The hangar went cold. Margaret realized they would have been a fireball over the Atlantic because they trusted screens over a man's ears. Dr. Aris sank into a chair, his pride shattered. He looked at his tablet as if it were a foreign object. Ethan didn't wait for an apology. He had 20 minutes until Lily. He grabbed a wrench and showed the stunned team how to shim the bypass valve. This will get you to New York safely, he said, hands moving with practiced speed. But replace the housing the moment you land. This is a metal problem, not a code problem. Don't trust the override for more than one flight. The engine was cycled. Whir. Roar. A perfect musical scream filled the hangar. The dashboard turned a solid, unwavering green. Impossible, Aris muttered. No one hears a fracture through ceramic. He's not an engineer. He's a medium. Margaret stepped toward him, her arrogance shattered. Who are you? A man like you doesn't end up serving coffee by accident. Ethan wiped his hands on a rag. I was the chief diagnostic officer for the 5th Wing. I spent 15 years making sure young pilots came home. He revealed the truth. He had been blacklisted for refusing to sign off on a flawed design from a major contractor, one of Margaret's rivals. He chose integrity over his career. When his wife died, he realized Lily was all that mattered. He traded prestige for the chance to be a father. Lily is why I work in the cafeteria, he said, meeting her eyes. I don't care about your merger. I care about being at the school gate at 3:15. I'd trade every jet here for one more hour of reading stories to her. The realization hit Margaret like a blow. The man she insulted as belonging behind a counter had saved her life despite her cruelty. She slowly bowed her head in silent, profound respect, the weight of her own arrogance finally visible on her face. The next morning, the private terminal was buzzing with a different kind of energy. The story of the engine whisperer had spread like wildfire through the airport's subculture. Margaret Sloan didn't head to her ivory tower office. Instead, she gathered the entire airport staff together, from the janitors and fuelers to the pilots and the regional VP. She didn't stand on a high stage or use a microphone. She stood on the linoleum floor, right next to the coffee machines where Ethan Brooks was preparing the morning brew. In front of everyone, she looked Ethan in the eye and apologized publicly. Yesterday, I committed the greatest sin of leadership, she said clearly, her voice steady. I judged a man by his uniform and completely forgot to look at his character. I mocked a man who, hours later, saved my life and the lives of my colleagues. I was blinded by my own success, and I forgot that excellence doesn't always wear a suit. Sometimes it wears a gray apron and carries a mop. She didn't make excuses or blame the stress of her billion-dollar deal. She owned her failure with a raw honesty that stunned her staff and changed the culture of the company in a single moment. She announced that Ethan's name would be officially recorded in the Sloan Aviation Safety logs as the man who prevented a major catastrophe. She then offered him a position as the global technical consultant for her entire fleet. She's salary was 10 times what he made in the kitchen, and the title was immensely prestigious. It would have put him back at the top of the industry he once loved, with a company car, a corner office, and a seat on the board. But Ethan looked at the contract and immediately turned to the hours and operations section. He looked at the travel requirements and the late-night global briefings. I have to pick up my daughter at 3:15, he reminded her, his voice soft but firm. That is my non-negotiable. If your job takes that away, I don't want it. I've already lost enough time to engines. I won't lose any more time to my daughter. Margaret smiled, a real, genuine smile that reached her eyes, softening the iron turbine facade. The job starts at 8:08 a.m. and ends at 2:30 p.m. No weekends. No international travel unless you want to bring her along. If an engine needs your ear, we will bring the jet to this hangar on a ferry flight. We will build a life around your daughter, Mr. Brooks, because we need your integrity in your ears more than we need your hours. We need you to teach us how to listen again, not just to machines, but to the people around us. Your priority is hers, and our priority is you. Ethan accepted, but he made one more request. He wanted the engineers to update their training protocols to include manual resonance checks. He wanted them to teach their students to listen to the metal, to feel the machine with their hands, and to never trust a screen more than their own human senses. He wanted to bring the soul back into the technology. He wanted to ensure that the next generation of engineers didn't just see data points on a graph, but felt the weight of the responsibility for the lives they held in their hands. The culture of the airport changed almost overnight. The professional wall between technical and service staff began to crumble. Pilots started learning the names of the ground crew who fueled their jets. Engineers began to visit the cafeteria not to be served, but to sit and talk to the man who knew the secret language of machines. They started to respect the people they had previously ignored, realizing that expertise often hides in plain sight, behind a tray or a broom. A few weeks later, Lily was invited to visit the hangar. She saw the massive jet, the gleaming tools, and the way everyone, even the most senior pilots, stepped aside with genuine respect when her father walked by. She saw a bronze plaque on the wall with his name on it, right next to the engine he had fixed. "Do you fix the planes, Daddy?" she asked, her eyes wide with wonder. Ethan knelt down and hugged her tightly, smelling the scent of her hair and the faint, familiar hint of jet fuel on his own hands. "I just make sure they stay safe, Lily. Just like I do for you." He realized then that he didn't have to choose between being a master of his craft and being a father. By standing for the truth in his own values, he had finally found a way to be both. He was no longer the cafeteria guy. He was the man who kept the sky safe and his daughter's world secure. The Sloan 7 eventually took off for New York 40 minutes late on that fateful day, but it arrived perfectly safely. The merger was signed and Margaret's empire grew even larger, becoming the world leader in safety-first aviation. But her leadership style had been forever altered. She became known as the CEO who listened. On her executive desk, she didn't keep a gold model of the jet or a photo of the merger. Instead, she kept a small, stainless steel cafeteria tray, polished to a mirror finish. It was a permanent reminder to never look down on a person based on their job title. It was a reminder that excellence can be found in the most humble places and that the man clearing your table might be the one who saves your life. She often told new recruits that the most expensive sensors in the world were useless if you didn't have the heart to respect the person operating the machine. Ethan continued his work, no longer the cafeteria guy, but still walking the same humble path. He refused the fancy office in the glass tower, preferring a small, functional desk in the corner of the hangar where he could hear the engines and smell the oil. He kept his old, faded uniform in a simple frame at home, not as a sign of where he had been, but as a sign of the humility he never wanted to lose. He remained a man of few words, but when he spoke, the entire hangar went silent. He spent his extra income on a college fund for Lily and a small garden for her to play in, finding more joy in a growing flower than in a soaring jet. He knew that true wealth wasn't about the balance in a bank account, but about the peace in one's soul at the end of a long day. Lily told her friends at school with immense pride, "My dad can hear what planes are thinking. He's a whisperer." She didn't know about the millions of dollars or the high-level consulting. She just knew her dad was always at the gate when school ended, and he always had time for her stories. To her, he wasn't a hero because he fixed an $8 million jet. He was a hero because he was there to catch her when she fell. The legacy he was building for her wasn't one of titanium and torque, but of kindness and unwavering presence. He taught her that the world might try to define you by the stains on your shirt, but the only definition that matters is the love you leave in the hearts of those who know you best. A young intern at the hangar once asked Ethan why he didn't take a higher-paying job with more travel and a bigger title at a rival firm. Ethan just smiled and pointed to his watch. It was 3:10 p.m. He was already picking up his car keys. "Because some things are worth more than $1 billion, son," he said, his voice warm. "And I'm about to go see the most important one. You can't put a price on the walk home from school, and you can't buy back the time you lose. Life isn't about how high you fly, it's about who you're flying for. If you lose sight of your ground crew at home, you'll never truly reach the stars." The airport became a quieter, more thoughtful place. The arrogance of the elite was replaced by a sense of shared responsibility and mutual respect. They had learned that technology is a powerful tool, but human character is the true engine that keeps the world moving. The narrator's voice closes the story over a shot of the Sloan 7 soaring gracefully into a golden sunset, its engines humming a perfect, healthy tune that only a master could truly appreciate. She mocked the cafeteria worker because she thought power was about the height of your jet or the zeros in your bank account. But she learned that real power is the man who stays in the shadows to keep others safe. Real power is the single dad who hears the truth when everyone else is deafened by the noise of their own success. Respect is not found in a title or a uniform. It is earned in the silence of a job well done, and in the courage to do what is right when no one is watching. In a world obsessed with the digital and the distant, Ethan Brooks reminded us all that the most vital connections are the ones we feel with our hands and protect with our lives. Because in the end, the most advanced machine in the world is nothing without the heart of a man who knows what truly matters. And Ethan Brooks knew exactly what mattered most. He didn't just fix an engine, he fixed a broken culture, and he did it all just to be home in time for his daughter. He proved that you don't need a cape or a cockpit to be a hero. Sometimes all you need is the patience to listen and the love to stay. If you believe that character is more important than a job title, and that fathers like Ethan are the true backbone of our world, those who choose their children and their integrity over everything else, leave a comment with the word respect and subscribe to Daddy Healing Stories. Let's tell the stories of the quiet heroes who keep the world flying and our hearts healing. Your support helps us share these lessons of humility and love with the world.